Sigmund Freud. I mean, you've definitely heard the name, you know the famous beard, and you've probably even used terms that he came up with. But the real story here, the story of how this doctor went from looking at nerve cells under a microscope to literally mapping the hidden world of the human mind, well, it's way more fascinating than you might think. Okay, let's get into it. So that's really the big question we're going to tackle. How did this one guy completely change the way we think and talk about ourselves? We're going to follow the journey of his ideas, from a pretty conventional medical lab all the way to a truly revolutionary new theory of the mind. And you know, that journey starts somewhere you might not expect, not in psychology, but in good old-fashioned hard science. To really get a handle on this, let's just quickly frame his life. Born in 1856, he spent most of his career in Vienna, which was this amazing hub of new ideas. But as we're about to see, it was a really important trip he took to Paris in 1885 that kind of set everything in motion, long before he was forced to escape to London at the very end of his life. Now, what's so wild about this is that the young Freud wasn't thinking about dreams or the unconscious at all. Nope, he was a neurologist. He was trained to look for physical, biological causes for everything. His whole world was about brain anatomy, the nervous system, things he could actually see and touch. But then a series of really strange cases started popping up, and they would force him to look beyond the physical body and into this mysterious, unseen realm. This was his big breakthrough moment. And two people were absolutely crucial here. First, that trip to Paris in '85 introduced Freud to Jean-Martin Charcot. Now, Charcot was using hypnosis to treat patients with something called hysteria. These were people with very real physical symptoms, like paralysis, but with no physical cause anyone could find. Then, back in Vienna, his buddy Joseph Breuer was working with a famous patient known as Anna O, and he noticed her symptoms seemed to get better just by talking about them. This quote right here, this captures the radical idea that was starting to brew in Freud's mind. The question became, what if the problem isn't in the body at all? What if it's in the mind? I mean, that single thought, that insight would change everything. It was the very beginning of psychoanalysis. So once this idea took root, Freud he started to run with it. He began to move away from his mentors to carve out his own path, and in doing so, he basically invented a whole new field from scratch. He figured out pretty quickly that hypnosis wasn't the perfect tool he'd hoped for. So he started tinkering, developing new techniques. First, he came up with what he called free association, where he just encouraged patients to say anything and everything that popped into their heads, no matter how weird or random. Then he turned to another hidden world entirely, our dreams. He became convinced they were a kind of secret highway into our deepest, most hidden thoughts. And all of this work, all these new ideas, they all come together in one landmark year. In 1900, he publishes The Interpretation of Dreams. And look, this wasn't just another book. It was a declaration. It officially introduced the world to his groundbreaking concepts, like the unconscious mind, the idea of repression, shoving unwanted thoughts down, and the symbolic language of our inner lives. And with that, he finally had a name for his creation, psychoanalysis. A whole new way to study the hidden parts of our minds and to understand how they secretly pull the strings on our behavior. So, psychoanalysis is officially on the map, and Freud's ideas start to spread like wildfire. Let's get to our final section and see how these theories, born over a century ago, left a complicated, controversial, but absolutely undeniable mark on the world we live in today. From those early breakthroughs, he built out a full map of the mind. He suggested there's this constant battle inside us between the id, which is our primal desires, the superego, our inner moral compass, and the ego, the poor referee stuck in the middle trying to manage it all. He said we use defense mechanisms to hide uncomfortable truths from ourselves. And while, a lot of these specific ideas aren't really accepted in mainstream psychology anymore, they gave us a whole new vocabulary for talking about our inner lives. And that's really the key thing to remember here. His theories were, and still are, incredibly controversial. They've been picked apart and criticized from just about every angle you can imagine. But you just can't deny their influence. He changed psychology forever, he inspired countless artists and writers, and he embedded his ideas so deep into our culture that we use them all the time without even realizing where they came from. So, You could say he gave us one of the first really detailed maps of the mind's hidden territories. It might have been flawed, sure, maybe it was incomplete, but it was a start. And it leaves us with a pretty big question to think about. A century later, with this map and all the new ones that have come after it, how much closer are we, really, to understanding ourselves?